Hey, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you might hail from. This is Glenn Setchfield, VP of Marketing for DMI, and welcome to today's DMIU Extra Credit webinar. Get growth, keep guarantees. Too often, advisors feel like they have to choose between growth and protection. So today is a better way to frame that conversation. And we are joined by Tyrell Jensen, our DMI Vice President of Annuity Sales. With nearly 20 years in the business, Tyrell helps advisors simplify complex client challenges and turn them into clear, scalable solutions. And you'll see him do that today very well. I'm excited about this one, Tyrell. This session is designed to give you a really fast tactical walkthrough on how to position income that can grow, lock in gains, and pay for life. Exactly the kind of practical strategy DMI is built to support. I'll keep it short. And Tyrell, I'm going to I'll let you run with this, but one last thing, everybody use the Q&A to get the most out of this presentation, like always. Please ask any question as we go, and we'll pick those up probably at the end, as this is short today, but look forward to the conversation here. So, Tyrell, glad to have you with us. I'll let you
Appreciate
get
it.
started.
Appreciate it, Glenn. So, as Glenn said, I want to kind of discuss a little bit about how you can get that guarantees, the protection, the growth, but also income. So, we're actually going to talk a little bit about Nationwide's New Heights Select product today, which is an income rider product. So, one thing and we've done a little bit of marketing or advertising around this with it being that it's the number one income product for the last 7 years. So, very interesting that it's been the number one product, and with that, people are going to look at it and say, well, obviously, it's got to have the highest income then. And I'll say that's a big misconception. It's not. I'll tell you why it wasn't necessarily the number one income rider product. It wasn't because it had the highest income. And so a lot of times people are going to say, not the highest income, then why am I using it for an income product if it doesn't have the absolute highest income for that client scenario? And so I want to first kind of dive into, why we would use this, even though it's not the highest income, and talk a little bit about what it does do and why we're using it still, even and why it has been the number one selling product. So to kind of frame this, I want to talk real quick a little bit about how most reps will start looking at income products when they have a client who needs an income rider, who wants that guaranteed pension style income. Most of the time, and I get this, I'll have reps that'll call me and say, hey, Tyrell, run a scenario for me. Here's the client's information. They want to take income in X years. They go out at X amount in their account and show me the top income. And so we have tools and resources that we can run those numbers and show the very highest income. And oftentimes it's we do it as a spreadsheet. So we're going to spreadsheet all the carriers and show you here's the top number one income. And this, I'll tell you right up front, this isn't always going to be the number one income. It's not going to hit that top of that spreadsheet. And but yet it's still the number one income rider product. I'm going to use an analogy to explain why it's number one, even though it's not the highest income. Let's say we're not selling, annuities today. Let's say we're not financial advisors or insurance agents. Let's say we're selling vehicles. So if I had a customer come in and said, Tyrell, I need a vehicle. I said, great. What are you trying to accomplish with that vehicle? And they say, I really want to be able to tow. That's my big thing right now. I just bought a new boat or a camp trailer, or whatever, and I want to be able to tow. So I want something that has the best towing capacity. So, awesome. Okay, great. Let me spreadsheet all my vehicles, and I'm gonna sort that spreadsheet by tow capacity. Every client who comes in wanting to be able to tow something, I'm gonna try and sell them a semi truck if I'm just spreadsheeting it. And I'm going to tell them, hey, here's a semi truck, this 18 wheeler. It's got the highest tow capacity, right? It's number one on my spreadsheet. But really, in practicality, they don't want to be driving around a semi truck, right? And so, oftentimes, when we look at our clients, I feel like sometimes we get a little too narrowed focus on their number one concern, which might be income is number one. But really, there's a variety of other things that person coming in wanting to buy a vehicle that has really good tow capacity probably also cares about how comfortable it is to drive the MPGs, what kind of mileage they can get. on it. How easy it is to maneuver around town. They're not wanting to drive a semi truck around town, right? So there's a lot of other reasons that they're looking at, but it's not those are, secondary reasons, but they're very important. And if we solely focus on the one tow capacity, everybody's going to be walking out of my dealership with a semi truck and they're going to come back pretty upset, or they're not going to buy from me, right? They're going to look at me and say, Tyrell's crazy. I'm not buying a semi truck. I'm going to go, to John down the street, another dealership, and he's going to sell me the vehicle that actually works. And so we have to really take a look at the client and step back and say, even though it's not number one income, does it do the income good enough? The idea of a pickup truck has good enough towing capacity, but it also has all these other features that are really, honestly, also important. And so that's kind of nationwide. While it might not always be number one in income, if we spreadsheet it, they're often very competitive. And while they might not be number one, they might be two, number three, number four on the list. And the difference is going to be very small in income. But I'll show you here as we walk through the rest of this information why it's the better product or the better vehicle to be utilizing. So why is it number one if it doesn't have highest income? I can tell you it's not just one thing that makes it number one. It's a combination of things, and we're going to kind of jump into this combination of several different features about the nationwide product that makes it that. And again, advisors are choosing this not because of the spreadsheeting. So again, they're not looking at this spreadsheeting it and saying what's going to give me the highest outcome. It's really the real world results of the nationwide product with all these other benefits and features we're going to dive into that make it the number one selling product. And then once you understand that, the reps, once they see that, what this competitive edge is, then they look at it and say, okay, I can go and show that to my clients. This is something I want to use and help my clients understand why this is the better product to be using, all these benefits and features that we're going to talk about. And that's where the advisors see that, and that's why they implement and use this product and what has made it the number one selling income rider product for the last 7 years. So what does it solve? So one, it really comes down to it solves several things. It's really the entire retirement problem that it's solving, which in most cases, people, even if they're looking for income, they're not wanting to sacrifice growth. So it's going to have that growth component. We're going to dive into how the growth component here in a second is better than other competitors and why. It's obviously going to give a strong guaranteed lifetime income, like all other income rider products on FIAs. It's going to give that guaranteed lifetime income for them. We're going to talk through a few things that make this product flexible and some unique features about it that nobody else in the industry has. And then also, it really solves that legacy where I can take income but still have a better opportunity to be leaving a higher death benefit when the client passes away. So as we kind of dive in, the other thing I want to talk about that makes it important when we're talking income, especially lifetime income, the carrier that we use matters a lot more than what I typically say. If I'm selling a 3-year MIGA, the client's going to jump in, be in the product for 3 years, and jump out. The carrier might not matter as much, meaning the strength of the carrier, who they are, might not be as important. And maybe that one we are rate shopping, who has the highest interest rate on this MIGA. But when we're looking at a carrier that the client's going to be with for the rest of their life, because we're starting a pension style income that they're really probably not ever going to get out of. And if this client's in their early 60s to mid 60s, they're likely to be with this carrier for 25, 30 plus years. And so the carrier really matters in this case. Say if the client's planning and wanting this pension style income to be there the rest of their life, we really need to make sure that the carrier is going to be there the rest of their life. And that's where Nationwide really has a very good competitive edge, very strong household name. And they really are a very, a stable and strong carrier. As we see, they're an A+ rated carrier. And so that does matter. And that's, again, just kind of point out, it's very important on, especially with those clients who are taking guaranteed lifetime income, because they're really needing that income for the rest of their life. So we want a carrier that's strong enough, stable enough to be there and through the tests of time and really be there for that client, giving them that pension style income for the rest of their life. So that is one of the things that really stands out with Nationwide is that name recognition and the strength of the carrier that has helped it become the number one selling product. Next, I want to dive into this guaranteed income and accumulation and how Nationwide is different than other carriers with this. We have a little saying, a phrase we use. We say it's Nationwide really gives G plus A, guaranteed income plus accumulation. And I want to show you how that is different with Nationwide than pretty much all of its other competitors. And I want to show this by comparing a couple of its competitors and what they do with their growth opportunity when we're looking at the difference from going an accumulation product that they have versus switching to an income product. So here you can see we have F&G and Corebridge, and not picking on them for any particular reason, just randomly selected a couple carriers. But really, we could do this with any carrier. You name the carrier, and we could pull this information and show you how they structure their products differently from accumulation to guaranteed income. Let's look at F&G here on the accumulation. So this is their Power Accumulator 10 product, which is not an income rider product. It's just a growth or accumulation style product. And on this CIBC index, they have a 290% participation rate, and that's on their 2-year point to point. If we switch to their income product, which one of their income products is the Safe Income Advantage, when we look at that product, that same index on that 2-year point to point goes from 290% par on the accumulation product to only 125% participation rate on the income product. And so what they're doing really is when the carriers are pricing these products out and they're creating different products for different things, the pricing is different. And so they're not putting as much opportunity into the accumulation side. So that accumulation, the account value is going to suffer because they're adding that income feature to it. Again, we look at Corebridge here on their Power Select Builder, 290%, and that's with a 1% fee. You hop over to their income rider product, and that drops to 140% with that 1% fee. So again, they're significantly cutting the opportunity for growth. And we'll get into a little bit why that's important here, but want to show and explain that that is very common with 99% of all the carriers out there. When they build these products, they build them on separate chassis, different structures for an accumulation styled product versus an income rider product. Now, Nationwide is different, like I mentioned. Nationwide, their product, it's the same product, whether you use it for growth or whether you use it for income. So the rates on it are the exact same. You see if it's the Nationwide New Heights Select product, they have the accumulation side where the par rate on this one on a 3-year strategy on the Goldman Sachs is 260%. That's if we're paying for the enhanced par rate with a 75 basis point spread. Versus if you look down below, the other one is at 225%. It's the exact same strategy, but without a fee. Now, if you look to the right side, you see the guaranteed income side. This one has the same 260% participation rate with the same 75 basis point spread. And same when you look down below, the no fee option is at 225 still. The reason is that Nationwide has their product. The income rider is just a rider you add on top of their accumulation product. So very, very different in the way they've structured their product. The way that they've priced it and the way that they've designed it is very different, which is unique to Nationwide. And I'll show you how that comes into play and why this benefit, why it's such a strong and compelling reason to utilize them. So really, we're getting the guarantees, the guaranteed income without sacrificing any of the accumulation opportunity with this product. So let's see how this actually plays into a real scenario. So we have a 60-year-old who has 100 grand. They're going to dump into an income rider product, and they're going to defer income for 10 years. And we're going to compare this to the F&G, that same one we looked at just a second ago on the rates, and compare the income compared to the Nationwide's product. So these lines represent the account value over time. So because of that lower opportunity for growth on that F&G, and because of the fee that's being taken off, the account value really doesn't grow over those 10 years. Now they're triggering income in the 10th year, and Nationwide is giving that about $16,500 versus F&G giving roughly $500, right? So about $1,000 less in income. But we notice as soon as they start income, that F&G product, that red line represents the account value. It plummets pretty quickly. And that's because it doesn't have strong enough participation rates to keep up with the withdrawals that we're taking over time. Versus if we look at, obviously, the New Heights Select product, that one's continuing to grow even when we're taking income. So we look at age 80 and what the account value is at age 80. On the nationwide product, we're at $417,000 of account value. In F&G, we're at zero. Massive difference here. Let me just say, maybe the nationwide isn't going to perform as well as what we're showing here. Let's cut that number in half. Let's say that the value is only 200 grand at age 80. F&G, and this is the numbers taken from each carrier's illustrations. So this is what the current par rates over time backcasted on how that index had performed over the last 10 years. So when we look at this, that's what F&G is believing their product will do. That's what they're showing it's going to do. Nationwide is obviously showing this $417,000 worth of account value at age 80. But again, like I said, let's cut that in half. Let's cut it down, even say it's 100 grand. That's still $100,000 better than what F&G is proposing theirs would look like. So a massive difference in what the growth would look like. And why is that important? Well, it gives that flexibility. If when the clients pass away, one, it passes on that asset to the surviving spouse potentially, and or to children. It also means anytime during this period of time, this 20 years, if their situation changed after they started taking income, they either no longer needed income or something changed in their life, and they said, I need to switch my strategy here. On the F&G, they're likely to have very little or no cash value left. They're stuck. They can't get out. Where with Nationwide, it has a much higher opportunity to have cash value at any given point in the contract, even after starting the income. So very important here in giving that flexibility and providing a potential legacy at death. The difference here, if we look then at the G plus A, that guarantees plus the accumulation. Nationwide at the end here would have off of $100,000 given a total value of the income plus the death benefit at age 80 would have almost $600,000 of value. F&G, the only value that the client would essentially realize would be the income value because the account value would be at zero at age 80. So they would have gotten their income of $156,000. So again, massive difference. Again, if we wanted to cut that number in half for the New Heights Select product, still a very large drastic difference between the two. So I want to kind of dive in a little bit to show you one, how they Nationwide runs their income side, kind of what the roll up is and the bonus and that kind of stuff. But then also talk about another opportunity for having a better income than even the guarantees. So first we see here that Nationwide day one, they give a 30% income bonus. So I dump in 100 grand. Day one, my income value is $130,000. I can start taking income after 1 year, but if I defer and don't start income after 1 year, then every single year my income value grows at 9.5% compounded interest for up to 12 years. So every single year I defer, I'm getting that 9.5% compounded growth on my income bucket. Let's look and say, so here's this better opportunity depending on what happens with the indexes. And this again goes back to having the higher par rates lends a greater opportunity for this to happen. And that is that the income value, the client will be able to take a certain percentage based off their years, their age, a certain income percentage off of that income bucket. That's the 30% bonus plus growing at 9.5% compounded annually. Now, if the account value happens to outperform at any point the roll up, then the client could have a higher income. That also comes into play after I started income. So at any point after I've even started income, if my account value goes above my income rider bucket value, then Nationwide will increase, and that increase is locked in for the rest of their life, that higher income amount. So it has that opportunity to give you that really strong guaranteed income, but then on top of it, depending upon the performance of the indexes, it could even be a higher income potentially. So now I want to kind of jump in and talk a little bit about flexibility and how the Nationwide provides better flexibility than other carriers out there. So one thing, and this is unique to Annexus, is tracking values daily. What do I mean by that? So real quick, most carriers, if when I get into the indexed annuity, they're going to look at my account value today, and then if I'm on a 1 year point to point, my account value is the same until the anniversary, and then they'll credit any interest earned. If anything happens in between that 1 year point to point, death, taking withdrawals, anything, it doesn't matter. It goes back to my anniversary date. Let's say it's February 1st, and that is the value that they look at. So let's say that take a scenario. We got into the policy on February 1st, and I'm a couple years into this, and my anniversary is February 1st. I got credited interest. Let's say the client passes away November 17th. Well, most carriers are going to look back to the policy anniversary value of February 1st, and that's going to be the death benefit that's given, is that February 1st value. Nationwide, they're actually going to look at the value of the indexes on November 17th, the date of death, and that is going to be the death benefit. That daily tracking applies to free withdrawals, required minimum distributions, your confinement waivers, and your terminal illness waiver. So if there's any kind of need access to the policy or a death benefit is paid, they're tracking the values daily on the indexes, and they will credit the interest up to that point rather than going back to the policy anniversary date for its value. So this can make a large difference if in that 11 months or 10 months the markets have performed well and we're up 8, 9, 10%. That could be a large difference in value. And most people would look at this, the clients and the clients' children would look at this and say, why, that's kind of archaic that I'm going back. I don't get to realize any of the gain up to this point. So another really cool feature is that you can lock in those values, those daily values. So if at any point during your 2-year point-to-point or 3-year point-to-point, the term time period, the market's up and the client likes it, they can lock that value in and actually realize the interest on that growth. And again, with that, they can do that on each individual index. So if I'm allocated into four different indexes, I can lock in just one if it happens to be the better opportunity and the others aren't up yet. So I can lock that in. The other feature that I really like is this co-annuitant for spouses feature. This is very unique to Nationwide. Nobody else does this. And a quick explanation of how this works is so Nationwide has co-annuitants, not joint annuitants. Most carriers will allow for joint annuitants on contracts. Nationwide does joint annuitants, but they also have what they call a co-annuitant. Because their contracts are annuitant driven, they do this for spouses. So if let's say a husband has an IRA and it's he's going to be the owner and he's going to be the annuitant. The spouse, if she's listed as the primary beneficiary, she will automatically become a co-annuitant. What this does is because if it's annuitant driven, if the spouse passes away, if the wife, it's not her IRA, it's her husband's, and the contract is in his name, if she were to pass away, the husband would be able to take a death benefit if he wanted, because the one of the annuitants passed, the co-annuitant. And so it really adds a lot of flexibility. So if a spouse were to pass away, the husband would be allowed to continue the contract as though nothing happened. He could, continue the income if he had already elected the income. Or he could say, I want to take a death benefit. Maybe my situation has changed. I no longer need this income because both of us aren't alive anymore. So what it does is it really adds flexibility for the death of first spouse, which is very unique to Nationwide. So want to kind of dive in real quick. I know we're coming up on time here, so I want to dive in to just a quick overview of the product summary. So Nationwide has 4 different term periods. So they have an 8, 9, 10, and 12-year surrender charge period. They're not approved in all states. So, when you're looking at this, just make sure that whichever one you're interested in is approved in your state. They have 1 and 3-year index terms for their 9 and 12, and they have 1 and 2-year index terms for their 8 and 10-year product. Minimum startup is $25,000, has a 7% free withdrawal. And then, like I mentioned earlier, there's the option income rider on all of the term lengths. So the 8, 9, 10, and 12, and they all work the same with the 30% bonus and the 9.5% compounding roll up. And there's a 1.1% rider fee. So kind of just to summarize why is this better? Why has this been the number one? It's because of more growth is the big one. That is a huge key feature. The more growth really provides for flexibility, better death benefit, and more control for the client. Because if something were to change in their scenario, they would have more like a higher opportunity for cash value to be there in their contract over the competitors' products for them to be able to make those changes inside their situation and be able to really be flexible. They're not handcuffed into something. And then again, more legacy for their beneficiaries. So again, advisors are choosing this because it's obviously one has all of these features. It's easier to explain to the client on how this, there's going to be a cash value there more likely than not. And they have less objections to getting into this. We're not having to show the client once you start income in a few years, there's going to be no, real account value there. And so to kind of sum it up, don't sell semi trucks. Really, let's look for what really is going to be in the client's best interest here, given one income, but also that growth, that flexibility, and the legacy. So I say, obviously, you're going to have a couple clients here or there who need a semi truck. So in those cases, sell the semi truck, right? If they need the most income, and we're going to spreadsheet it and say every penny counts for this client, great, we'll sell them a semi truck, the one that has the highest income. But that's honestly, in most cases, pretty rare. To give up a few dollars here or there to get all these other benefits, most clients would give those few dollars up to get that. So, with that, I will turn it back over to Glenn and Maureen and see if we have any questions.
Thanks, Tyrell. That was awesome. I have one question from the field is, and let me see if I can say this correctly. Is there a sweet spot on the deferral period before your clients start income?
Yes, there is. So I'd say, nationwide, because of that 9.5%, growth that you get per year, one, we have to wait the 1 year. So we can't start it within the first contract year. So if that's a deal breaker, again, we'd want to either look at a different carrier or come up with a solution by maybe setting some of the funds aside to use for that first year income. But I'd say the sweet spot is really, deferring for a few years, handful of years. That's where we're going to see them be number one in some scenarios where we're waiting maybe 5+ years because that 9.5% roll up is so competitive on top of that 30% bonus. The longer the client can wait, the better. And that roll up does go for 12 years. So it's a little longer. Most carriers are only 10. So if maybe we have a little younger client who says, I'm going to start income in maybe 10, 12 years, you're going to find that they're going to be number one in a lot of scenarios.
That's
Hey
excellent.
Tyrell, if we don't want our advisors selling semi trucks, if we want them taking this new strategy, what do they usually get wrong? Well, if somebody implements this, what do they typically get wrong, would you say? Makes sense.
So yeah, so I think if you're asking kind of if we're going to implement this strategy, kind of maybe what's the better way to implement it and make sure that we're that it's going to be effective for the client. So
Yeah.
one, I'd say making sure that the we know their time horizon for when they're going to want to start income, and then be able to plug this in. Again, we're a lot of times I think what most people get wrong when they're looking at this is that they get hung up on income. All the time I'll have reps that when I start talking income and we're comparing carriers, they'll get hung up and say, well, this other carrier is $17,500 and this other carrier is 17. Well, that's $500 a year. And I say, yes, while that might be true, let's total that up over their lifetime. It works out to be a very small number in comparison, right? When we really look at it, it ends up not being a big deal. And then I like to break that down into real world dollars. So I say, okay, that's $500 a year. Is that going to make or break the client's retirement lifestyle? $500 a year? Most likely not. No. In most cases, it's not. And the client's not even going to think about that and be concerned about that extra $500 when you point out all the other features. And so sometimes it's getting hung up. A lot of times we, as advisors, are squeezing every dollar and want to maximize every dollar for every penny we can get out of that dollar. And while that is good and we should be doing that, it's not just always about income, right? It's about the total value to the client. And so I feel like that's oftentimes where we get it wrong is that we kind of put that hat on where we're trying to squeeze every penny out of every dollar for the client, but we maybe miss other things.
Yeah. Yeah. A good response. Uh, Maureen, do we have any other questions?
We have more of a statement, Tyrell, that maybe you can address
Yeah.
that the Nationwide and the Nexus products are the performance is poor.
So yes and no. While it has been true in some cases. Again, it depends upon so the indexes that have been out there. One, Nexus, they do what I call actively manage the available indexes. So we've seen over the years since this product came out, some of the indexes that they had picked, they've actually replaced with new indexes because over a long period of time, the types of indexes that they have, some might not perform in better scenarios. Some, economic environments. So one, I would say what I found for most reps when they have poor performance in a product, more times than not, it's because they don't diversify. And this is one of my little soapboxes that anybody who works with me knows that I kind of scream this from the mountaintop, I guess you could say. Diversification. We can never outguess the market, right? If we could, we wouldn't be sitting here chatting today. We'd all be on private islands, right? So I would say that's a big one is diversification, using a mix of all of the available indexes and ensuring that you have the widest diversification of opportunity. So that would be part of it. And two, yes, some of the indexes that Annexus had picked had lower performance. They weed those out as they see that, and they bring in other ones and keep the ones that have strong performance so that over time they're ensuring that they have the best mix possible. But again, I'd say that tends to be the smaller piece. The larger piece is lack of diversification.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's a good point, Tyrell. And I guess the broader point is that, if you're thinking about where this fits in your book, don't try to figure it out alone. This is exactly what Tyrell does every single day. He helps advisors take these concepts and then just turn them into real client conversations, and he can help you with that conversation, scripting it out in your mind. Um,
Yeah, I'd say to that, Glenn. So
yeah.
if you have a client, somebody you're looking at who needs pension style income, I'd invite you to reach out to us. So if you currently work with somebody here at DMI, a vice president of annuity sales, reach out to your VP and give them the information, but don't give them the instruction to spreadsheet it and show me the highest income. Say, hey, I want to see who do you think is best given I want income, but I want to also see the flexibility there and have them, run those numbers and show you and walk you through that client scenario and show you where that's why, Nationwide is most likely going to be the best scenario. Again, not always, but often it will be. So bring your client information, give me a holler or your VP, and let's walk through a real case scenario and show you and be able to show you why Nationwide is a very good, strong opportunity for those cases.
And let's stop selling semi trucks.
Yeah. Nobody wants to drive that around town, right?
No, no. Well, nice job, Tyrell. Really appreciate
Thank you.
it. And everybody on the call, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate the engagement. And we actually have a DMIU webinar, standard DMIU webinar on Wednesday. Maureen, what is that topic about on
I
next
believe
Wednesday?
that's the RAO, Glenn.
Yeah,
That's going to be about how to build better, more fortified retirements for about 50% less capital. That the major thing people are doing wrong is over investing for the income portion when you don't really have to. You can hold some of that, reinvest it for AUM, keep your growth side going while clients take income.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a good one with Andy Robertson as our host. But thanks again, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your Friday and have a great weekend. Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody take
Take
care.
care.
Bye bye.